Namaskar. Welcome to Kasturba Katha on this auspicious Yogini Ekadashi day with prayers for good health and well-being of everyone, especially all the women out there who are bravely coping up with the challenges of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. I will start Kasturba Katha with her favorite Sanskrit prayer, Asato Ma Sadgamaya, from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, verse 1.2.28. Lead us from unreal to real. Lead us from darkness to the light. Lead us from the fear of death to the knowledge of I want to express my grateful thanks to Dr. Pillai and Dr. Narayanan of the Indian Development Foundation for hosting the Kasturba Katha during the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, which incidentally is also the 150th birth anniversary of Kasturba Gandhi. And we, the Gandhijan, are celebrating it as Bapu 150. I convey my warm wishes to the caregivers and the ambassadors of IDF, all the partners and donors, and everyone who has joined me here this evening. We are all together and stand in solidarity with each other in our common fight against the pandemic. During the commemoration of Gandhi 150, it started in 2018 October. I have visited many countries. This year, I went to 33 countries to give 148 Gandhi Katha and Kasturba Katha. In each of the countries, people showed great reverence and respect for both Mahatma Gandhi and Kasturba Gandhi. As I spoke about their sacrifice and especially the contribution of Kasturba Gandhi for inspiring millions of women in South Africa and India. Kasturba Katha is based on the ancient Indian oral tradition of Katha, like Ramakatha or Bhagavad Katha, with bhajans and dhuns. In today's Katha, Srimati Swati Bhagat and Sri Deepak Kalra will be singing the bhajans and dhuns. The technical support and the PowerPoint presentation are by Dr. Ravi Chopra. The lyrics of the Katha, especially the dhuns, which I am going to play, have been composed by late Sri Narayan Desai ji and the renowned Hindi poet, late Sri Bhavani Prasad Mishra ji. I am very grateful to all of them. Kastur, daughter of Gokuldas Makanji and Rajkuvar Ba, was born in Porbandar on 11th April 1869. In the same year as Mohandas, the son of Karamchand Gandhi and Putli Bai Gandhi was born. They used to call their youngest son Monia, who was 6 months younger than Kastur, and his parents showered their love on Kastur. Both families were friends and neighbors. Kastur, as she was called, had two brothers, one younger and one older, and grew up as the only daughter of the wealthy and indulgent parents. Often Kastur used to go to Monia's courtyard to play, especially hide and seek. She was a fast runner and could beat Monia in the game anytime. And he used to be always the den, and that annoyed Monia. He went and said that, oh, I am older than you, and I have the horoscope to prove that. And they got into an argument. All the girls were on the side of Kastur, and all the boys were on the side of Monia. So, looking at the commotion, Putlibai often used to come to stop the fight. But when Kastur said that we should go to Mota Bapu, that is Karamchand Gandhi, to settle the dispute, only then Monia agreed to back out. Though he decided never ever to play with her, with girls, and especially with Kastur again. As they grew up, Monia started attending school, and Kastur stayed at home. In those days, 150 years ago, girls did not go to school. She, her education was through listening to the mythological stories of great women like Savitri, Taramati, and others, and the sacrifices made by such great women. She resolved to be like them. When she grew up a little more, and as Munia got very busy with his studies, and he had seen the play Shravan Kumar and had decided that he will serve his parents. So he used to come back straight from the school because he was a timid and shy child, and look after his father who was bedridden for a long time. Meanwhile, Kastur was taught to cook, serve, and look after the family's needs. And that's how she learned almost everything. But she was very fond of bhajans. She used to sing beautifully. Her upbringing and values were that of a Vaishnava family, which included going to the temple daily, worship of Tulasi, strict vegetarianism, and service intertwined with equality of religions, the dignity of labor, and control of the palate. She used to undertake vrata, rigorous vrata, even in her young age. It did not involve rebellion against men. It combined renunciation, tapas, and non attachment with self dependence, dignity, and sacrifice. The parents decided to knit the two families together, and that was by getting them engaged at the age of 7 years. And at the age of 13, Monia and Kastur were married with great pomp and ceremonies. After marriage, Kastur came to be known as Kasturbai and spent the early married life in her father-in-law's home in Rajkot. Kasturbai was a spirited girl, though she never had the opportunity to go to school, but she had very good common sense, was a good judge of people. She was very friendly, fond of talking and dressing up like every other girl of her age is. But she was very courageous, hardworking, simple, God fearing, independent, persevering, and reticent. Till they were not married, Munia and Kastur were friends. But after marriage, when her husband started checking her movements and told her not to go anywhere without his permission and without informing him, she resisted her husband's restrictions, as he told her not to meet her friends or not to go to the temple with with her mother-in-law. So Kastur was very independent and had many friends and loved going out. So she insisted on going out whenever she wanted to visit her friends or go to the temple. When she was spoken to rudely by her husband, she kept quiet and left. She was never rude with him, never discourteous, or she never answered him back. But probably she never ever obeyed her husband's commands. Gandhiji wrote in his autobiography that my wife became my guru as she taught me the lesson of non-violence through truth force and also Savinay Avagya, breaking the law courteously, which he later used in all his non-violent civil disobedience movement. In 1884, Kastur gave birth to the first child prematurely, who unfortunately did not survive. Both the very young parents were heartbroken at this loss, shattered totally, as also by the passing away of Mohandas's father, Karamchand Gandhi, in 1938. In 1988, in 1888, when the financial situation of the house became very bad after Karamchand Gandhi's demise, Putlibai decided to send her son to Bhavnagar to join Shamal Das College, leaving behind a lonely Kastur. Kasturba was very fond of chopais from Goswami Tulsidas's Ramcharitmanas. As I said, she was also a good singer. So we will listen to the chopais, some of her favorite chopais, which she used to learn behind in the kuti. As you see, the ba kuti, she used to sit and sing those chopais, which is what we are going to play right now for you.
कौन को मद मार लगे राम को मद मान ना लोभ न क्षोभ न राग न जिनके कपट दम्भ नहीं माया तिनके हृदय बसहु रघुराया जिनके कपट दम्भ नहीं माया तिनके हृदय बसहु रघुराया सबके प्रिय सबके हितकारी दुख सुख सरस प्रशंसा गारी सबके प्रिय सबके हितकारी दुख सुख सरस प्रशंसा गारी कहि सत्य प्रिय वचन विचारी जागत सोवत शरण तुम्हारी कहि सत्य प्रिय वचन विचारी जागत सोवत शरण तुम्हारी तुम ही छोड़ गति दूसरी नाई राम बसहु तिनके मन माही तुम ही छोड़ गति दूसरी नाई राम बसहु तिनके मन माही
As Mohandas returned home from Bhavnagar in 1888 without completing his college studies because he really did not like the English medium education, the style of teaching in the college with very few teachers. He also did not like the subjects that he was studying and was getting headaches and nose bleeding. So he came back home. And that same year, their second son, or now the first son, Harilal, was born. As the family was facing financial difficulties, an old family friend, Mauji Dave, advised Putlibai to send her son to London to study law to cover up the expenses. Kasturbai agreed without any complaint to mortgage her jewelry. As Kastur could not read properly, from London, where Mohandas had gone for 3 years, all the messages were sent in the letters he wrote to his brother Karsan Das. When she saw his photo, she almost did not recognize her husband in the western dress with a neat side parting. Only his right ear gave him away. She thought that he was looking more like an Englishman than a Gujarati. She was also apprehensive whether he would remember her and Harilal also. For young Kasturbai, after the death of her mother-in-law Putlibai, it must have been a difficult time being the wife of a younger brother in a joint family who was for many months asking for money. In 1891, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi returned from England and was admitted to the Bombay High Court. So he had to leave for Bombay. Kasturbai did not go with him to Bombay. But after a few days, he returned to Rajkot as he could not make much of a success of his legal career in Bombay. Kasturba was very vigilant and she had noticed the worries of her brother in law, Lakshman Das, and a worried face of the second brother in law, Karsan Das, about the financial conditions of the family. One night, Kastur reminded Mohandas about the debt he owed to his brothers and to because for to her he seemed oblivious to the problems and did not care about the obligations to his brother. So she told him directly. Mohandas was annoyed. He sent her to her parents' house along with Harilal. But Kastur, being the intelligent, beautiful woman that she was, she realized that her husband's main problem was with himself and not with her, and he would soon ask her to return. When she was asked to come back within a month, Kasturbai was not surprised. But when she went back, now there were no more lessons that Mohan wanted to teach her every night. No more suspicion, no more quarrels, and there was a new tenderness in Kasturbai as she learnt more about her husband's true worries and insecurities. He had confided in her that all he had studied in London was the English law, and he was not familiar with the Indian law at all. Therefore, he was finding it very, very difficult to start up any legal practice here. She told him to talk to his brother. In 1882, Manilal was born, and by then Gandhi had taken to drafting and writing petitions in Rajkot, and their financial conditions somewhat improved. In April 1883, Mohandas sailed to Durban on a 1 year assignment, leaving behind Kasturbai and with 5-year-old Harilal and an infant Manilal. In 11 years of marriage, they had lived together hardly for 4 years. And during Mohandas' stay in South Africa, there was no direct correspondence between them. But that 1 year stretched to 3 years. And on that same first year itself, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi, at the age of 24, had come face to face with racial discrimination, humiliation, and injustice. On 7 June 1883, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi was thrown out of the first class compartment in Peters Maritzburg's railway station. A metamorphosis took place that night as he had discovered a new way of fighting injustice through nonviolent resistance, through self sacrifice and suffering. 13 years later, Satyagraha was born, but the seeds of Satyagraha were sown on that day. And the individual barrister Mohandas Gandhi turned into the societal Gandhi wife, emerging as an activist, political organizer, and established the Natal Indian Congress to oppose injustice non-violently by mobilizing 30,000 Indian merchants and the Indian indentured labor or Girmitias living in South Africa. Barrister Mohandas Gandhi by now had also established a fairly good practice. He was known not for accepting any cases which were not based on truth. So, to explain this change, transformation that took place in Gandhiji's life, we will play a dhun which says Man वाणी कर्म से सत्य ही तू बोल, जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू खोल। ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का।
ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमन, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमन। मनमानी करके सत्य ही बोलो, जीवन में मंगल के द्वार है तू। ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमन, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमन, सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमन।
At the age of 19, two theosophist friends had come to student Mohandas Gandhi with Sir Edward Arnold's book, The Song Celestial, which was the translation of the Bhagavad Gita. They wanted to read the original Sanskrit Bhagavad Gita with Gandhiji. That opened up his mind, and he was so impressed with the Bhagavad Gita, especially the verses 62 and 63 from the second chapter. ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः संगस्तेषुपजायते, संगात् संजायते कामः, कामात् क्रोधो विजायते, क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः, सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः, स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो, बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. And from that day onwards, he considered Gita as his infallible guide, dictionary of daily conduct, and went back to it, give the Bhagavad Gita, in every moment of crisis. From that day onwards, he lived his life according to the central messages of the Bhagavad Gita, selflessly, without attachment and possession. So, if anybody wants to learn how to live according to the messages of the Bhagavad Gita, which teaches the art of living, Gandhi and Kasturba Gandhi are the role models for all of us. Gandhiji returned to India in 1896 to bring back his family from Rajkot and really wanted to settle in South Africa. His children hardly recognized him as they were more attached to Bapu, Lakshmi Das, and the other Mota Bapu, Karsan Das. Gandhi, of course, remained very busy in traveling around India, as his real focus of coming to India was to educate public opinion and create more interest about South Africa, especially the Natal Franchise Adjustment Bill among the leading Indian politicians. So he went around India talking and meeting the politicians who were very busy with other issues. So he came back to Rajkot and was very restless. Kasturba could detect that now her husband was very deep in thoughts and was restless. But then he had to rush back to South Africa and sail from Bombay to Durban with Kasturba, Harilal, Manilal, and his nephew Gokuldas. Gandhiji decided that Kastur should wear the Parsi style sari and a long blouse, and children should wear Parsi coat and trousers, shoes and socks, eat with forks and knives, which were more suitable to their new surroundings. This caused a lot of hardship and a heavy price to Kasturba and the children, just to be regarded as civilized. Though in Durban, Kasturba lived in the spacious Beech Grove villa, but she prepared herself to face great hardships and suffering to start a new life in a foreign soil with no friends or relatives. But Kasturba had a quality that most Hindu wives have, who willingly or unwillingly she followed her husband's steps and never stood in their way. Gandhi's home was open to everybody. Everyone was welcome. And he called his associates who were working in the office to live with them. Kasturba noticed that Mohandas was known as Mr. Gandhi in Durban. He had become very calm and composed, often lost in thoughts, very forgiving. He did what he advised others to do and was busier than ever before. Kasturba understood as she resolved silently to walk along with her husband on the path of selfless service through nonviolence. Though their domestic life was not free from occasional quarrels and squabbles, but over time, Kasturba came to realize that her husband stood for certain ideals and principles, and she would stand by them, come what may. In due time, she watched her husband getting obsessed with the idea of simplicity, simplifying their lives, and reducing household expenses because more money was to be spent on public service. So the first thing was that all the servants were dismissed. Now everyone, including the children, had to help with the household work. The biggest burden, of course, had to be borne by Kasturba, who had to cook, look after the immediate family's needs of the guests and their many boarders. In due course of time, Kasturba gave birth to Ramdas and Devdas, their third and fourth children, and in the absence of an Indian nurse, her husband assisted the doctor, and in the case of Devdas, he conducted the delivery himself because there was no time left. But as a result, Kasturba was bedridden with anemia and acute weakness for a long time. Mohandas took care of the mother, all the children, and the newborn baby. Kasturba was not a follower of Gandhi. She was a companion who observed the same duties. She earned a place in history because of her sacrifice and strength of conviction, not only because she was the wife of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, but it was mainly for her fight for the basic rights for Indians in South Africa and in the Indian freedom movement. Her life gives a glimpse of how a strong woman can empower herself, staying within the folds of the tradition and conventions. She supported the transformation of Mohan to Mahatma and was a silent partner in his struggle. She taught Gandhi nonviolence through her conduct. She never bowed to his unjust commands when he was playing husband, but yet she never forsake her courtesy. She won over Gandhi at the end of the bitterest disputes with her plain, frank speech, her pleasant nature, and firmness. Her love for her husband never remained on low ebb. Her husband's quest was the quest for truth through non-violence and purity of means, which we will explain in this Gandhi Katha Dhun, which says, आंखें पवित्र रख सत्य ही तू बोल जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तू खोल.
आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल. ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल. सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल, सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल. उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध, उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध. आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल. ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल.
Kasturba's philosophy of life was embedded on faith and a firm resolve to transform it into conviction. The virtues of a Hindu woman and love for her husband prompted Kasturba in 1904 to move from her palatial Durban house to Phoenix settlement for a life of community living, voluntary self control, bread labor, and voluntary poverty. Ultimately, those values and love for her husband gradually became integral to her life in Phoenix settlement, ultimately resulting in faith. She was the first Indian woman satyagrahi who voluntarily faced a jail sentence in foreign soil in South Africa in a fight for basic rights for Indian women. She willingly quoted the jail term for 3 months in an alien land without knowing the language and keeping her vegetarian habit intact. The ladies of the Phoenix settlement also joined the struggle, and so did the Girmitia women, who made great sacrifices to take part in the Satyagraha in 1913 called by Gandhi Raja. Kasturba Gandhi, by her silent suffering as a prisoner for 3 months' rigorous imprisonment, made a crucial contribution to the success of Satyagraha in South Africa. And this is very little, nobody knows about it much. This faith stayed with her from life as she moved from South Africa to India in 1915, and after 1 year of traveling by third class compartment with her husband, she settled in Sabarmati Ashram from 1917 to 1930 and in the Sevagram Ashram from 1936 to 1944, 42 rather. In all the ashrams, she was known as Ba, the mother of the ashramites. Ashram life had a mingling of political and spiritual aims. It was a training ground for preparing ordinary people as satyagrahis and lifelong workers engaged in constructive programs for nation building. It was a life of strict routine from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. Voluntary control through Ekadasha Vrata, the 11 rules set by Gandhiji for all the ashram inmates. Punctuality, discipline, promptness, minimalistic living in harmony with nature, following the environmental credo of Gandhiji of minimum use of resources, recycling, reusing, re- reducing the needs, growing simple grains and vegetables and fruits, cooking simple vegetarian food and eating as a community together. Ashram life. was a life of caring and sharing, being ever vigilant to the needs of others, managing the ashram arrangements with meager finances. There were 4 community activities, daily morning and evening prayers, daily practices of cleanliness, sanitation, and hygiene, daily spinning. And I started spinning at the age of 5. Bread labor, constructive programs, using every minute of time, which is the only non renewable resource all of us have. And we must use the time available to us very carefully, like Kasturba Gandhi and Gandhiji did. Ba was known for her punctuality, discipline, and promptness, like her husband. In his quest for truth and easing and eagerness to relieve human suffering, Gandhi had long discovered a simple, inexpensive method of treating diseases through nature cure: diet control, hydrotherapy, sun bath, mud packs, and observing silence and fasting. Ba and the ashram inmates not only participated in it, but Ba became an expert in nature cure, and she used to treat patients herself like her husband. In the ashram prayers, the morning and evening prayers, the first verse of the Isha Vasyopanishad used to be recited. ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वं यत्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत् तेन त्यक्तेन भुञ्जीथा मा गृधत् कस्य स्विद्धनम्. That everything in this universe belongs to God. Nothing belongs to you. Enjoy the objects of the world in an attitude of perfect non attachment. Enjoy it with a feeling of sacrifice to the extent that is necessary for you, and leave the rest for others in the society. Never ever crave the possession of others. Nothing really belongs to you. The same philosophy in the form of dhun, ना यह तेरा ना यह मेरा, ईश्वर का यह राज है.
ईश्वर का जन ईश्वर का फल ईश्वर का जन ईश्वर का फल ईश्वर का ही अनाज ईश्वर का ही अनाज नायक तेरा नायक मेरा नायक तेरा नायक मेरा ईश्वर का यह राज ईश्वर का यह राज ईश्वर का जन ईश्वर का फल ईश्वर का जन ईश्वर का फल ईश्वर का ही अनाज ईश्वर का ही अनाज
I have never seen Kasturba Gandhi, as she passed away before I was born, in Sevagram Ashram, where a few years ago Kasturba had actually lived with Gandhiji from 1936 till 1942, walked and breathed there. But on several occasions in my life, I met her and always felt her presence as if she was my own grandmother, whose blood flows in my veins. She was Ba, the mother to everyone, taking the full responsibility of managing and running all the ashrams While Gandhiji used to be away in the satyagrahas, she served and looked after the innumerable guests. Her four sons had moved away from her, but she found her sons in Saint Vinoba Bhave, in Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, in Jamnalal Bajaj, in Kishori Lal Mashruwala, and in Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Subhash Chandra Bose was younger than them and he really had a great regard for both Gandhiji and Kasturba. After his release from the Aga Khan Palace jail in May 1944, Gandhiji had carried the Tulsi plant with him, which was Ba's favorite plant, to plant it next to the Bapu Kuti in Sevagram ashram, where they had spent the last 6 years of their lives, leading a life like the poorest of the poor Indians before the final parting of 62 years association. She was no longer there, but I met her as her shadows lingered and her presence could be felt everywhere in the ashram. Her favorite tulsi plant had been planted there, and in Sevagram ashram, I always stopped by the tulsi plant and felt her presence. As long as Ba was alive, she would worship the tulsi plant and recited the shloka Mahaprasada Janani Sarva Saubhagyavardhini Adi Vyadhi Jara Muktam Tulsi Tvam Namostute. At the deepest level, I exist as consciousness. My consciousness, your consciousness, Gandhiji's consciousness, Kasturba's consciousness, and the universal consciousness, the God, are all one. I have studied in the ashram school, Nai Talim school, started by Gandhiji, and my father was inspired by Gandhiji from his childhood and was jailed during the freedom struggle. When he came to Sevagram Ashram and became the first principal of Nai Talim, and even after Gandhiji passed on, carried out Gandhian rural reconstruction through constructive activities for the next 5 to 6 decades. I have also continued to serve people through Gandhian organization and still I am doing it while my mission is to make people understand and put their hearts into knowing Gandhiji. Once Gandhiji had said, Nai Talim would be my greatest gift to India. The other gifts, of course, were Satyagraha, constructive activities, Ekadasha Vrata, his environmental credo, his insistence on inner and outer cleanliness, sanitation, hygiene, voluntary self control, reduction of wants, and simple life of minimalism, transparency and openness, and his sense of humor. Kasturba was the life partner of Gandhiji for over 62 years, bore him four sons, ran his various homes and ashrams, and went several times to jail for his cause. That she lived so long and played a part in public campaigns, all the satyagrahas, are two reasons why she is part of the nationalist consciousness. A third reason is that the man she married was the greatest of modern Indians. A fourth is that he wrote about her at some length too. Kasturba was a strong lady and as great as her husband, Mahatma Gandhi. Her personality had a vastness of its own. Kasturba was a fighter both in life and in politics. She had a mode of life that drew from the Indian traditions and combined with them the revolutionary thinking of her husband Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. She left Sevagram Ashram on 5th August 1942 for Bombay as Gandhiji was about to commence the Quit India movement. That evening, On the 7th of August, he spoke for 2.5 hours and asked British to quit India. That early morning of 8th August, he was arrested and taken to Aga Khan Palace jail. Kasturba asked him what she should do now. So he said, I really want you to go back to Sevagram and continue, take care of the ashram. Or if you want to come with me, I will not ask you why you want to come. But my real desire is that you go this evening and speak on my behalf at the Shivaji Park meeting and inspire people to stick to non-violence. As Kasturba Gandhi and Dr. Sushila Nair were leaving for Shivaji Park, they were arrested and taken to Arthur Road jail. From there, after 3 days, when her condition had deteriorated, she had very severe stomach upset and fever. She was transferred to Aga Khan Palace. And at the imposing gate of the Aga Khan Palace jail, when the guards stopped them, a very frail old lady and a young girl got down from the car, clutching to a tulsi plant. They asked for Gandhi, and they were led to the steps and to a long veranda. And in a room, they saw Bapu busy in writing. When he looked up, he said, why have you all come? Why have you both come here? Have you taken any permission to meet me? Sushila Nair, who was a young doctor, she said, Bapu, we have been arrested. We were in Arthur Road jail, and since Ba was not keeping well, they have shifted us here. Kasturba said, we are also political prisoners like you. And when Mahadev Desai gave her the stool to sit, Kasturba refused. She said, I will go to my cell, and left with Dr. Sushila Nair clutching to the tulsi plant. As the world scrambles to find a cure for coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, as a preventive healthcare measure, we can learn from Kasturba that for boosting the body's immune system, tulsi leaves are very helpful for minimizing the effects and hasten the recovery from many kinds of diseases. Even the experts have suggested that for boosting the body's immunity and minimizing the risk, the anti inflammatory properties of tulsi help in lowering inflammation, the risk of heart disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and many such things, soothes fever, headache, sore throat, cough, etc. And on 22nd February 1944, when Kasturba Gandhi breathed her last on her husband's lap as a prisoner in the Aga Khan Palace jail, Gandhiji wrote that Kasturba was not behind him in any respect. If anything, she stood above me. But for her unfailing cooperation, I might have been in the abyss. She helped me to keep wide awake and true to my vows. She stood by me in all my political fights and never hesitated to take the plunge. In the current sense of the word, she was uneducated, but to my mind, she was a model of true education. She was a devout Vaishnava, but she had removed all the feelings of caste from her mind and regarded a Harijan girl with no less affection than her own children. She personified the ideals of which Narsingh Mehta has sung in Vaishnava Janato. There were occasions when I was engaged in a grim wrestle with death. During that time, she never shed a tear, never lost hope or courage, but prayed to God with her soul. In the homage to Mother of the Indian people, issued by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose on the death of Kasturba Gandhi on February 22nd, 1944, he said, Srimati Kasturba was the ideal of Indian womanhood, strong, patient, silent, self-sufficient. Kasturba was a source of inspiration to the millions of India's daughters among whom she moved and who she met in the struggle for the freedom of our motherland. The fact that Kasturba Gandhi contributed immensely to public health emergencies and service to humanity along with her husband, Gandhiji, is not very well known. She had actively worked with him in eradication of plague and the outbreak of many other diseases, and including the Spanish influenza of 1918. When on 18th March, Gandhiji went to the Kuli location in Johannesburg to segregate the patients affected by bubonic plague, Kasturba went with him. And as Gandhiji quarantined all the patients in an empty godam, Kasturba went along with him to the Indian workers' settlement for talking to women, explaining how to stay healthy, observe hygiene, and how to recognize the symptoms of plague and how to stay safe. And the same thing she did during the pandemic when the ashram was thrown open, Ahmedabad ashram, Sabarmati ashram, to all the patients of Spanish flu pandemic. In that, they lost their eldest daughter-in-law Gulab in South Africa in 1904. Her husband had noticed Kasturba's traits for the first time, that even in such a life-threatening situation, Kasturba had amazing strength to work with women and inspire them. She showed empathy and displayed great capability. Not only was she conscientious, but also stayed steadfast and committed even in the face of unprecedented problems. And in the last century, Spanish flu remains the deadliest in the modern history, killing at least 50 million people and infecting more than 500 million. The 1918 H1N1 virus played a critical role in altering the course of India's history. Just like in the case of COVID 19 in 2020, there was no known medicine available to treat Spanish flu. The world of medical science was in a nascent stage back then, and developing a vaccine against Spanish flu was out of question. The first vaccine came on the scene only in 1940, and the first antibiotic medicine came in 1928, years after Spanish flu had ravaged the human population. So Kasturba advised everybody about keeping a distance, that is physical distance, wearing masks, and like any frontline health worker, she looked after them through nature cure, sponging them, giving them a mud pack, and taking care of their diet to boost the immunity. Kasturba's life inspires all of us with her selfless life of sacrifice, suffering, service to humanity during all the challenging times, and with her immense love for her husband, whom she opposed in the beginning, but later took up his cause and made it her own. In 1913, when Kasturba was a bit apprehensive as she was observing the Chaturmasa Vrata and was only eating fruits once a day. Going to the jail means she had to starve. But she went, she was in prison for 3 months, and she decided to go on a satyagraha in the jail about the unhygienic and rotten food that the inmates were being given, remembering the words of her husband that if she dies in jail during the satyagraha, he would call her Jagadamba, the mother of the universe. She remained true to her words and became the universal mother for all of us on 22nd February 1944 when she died in Aga Khan Palace Jail. I will end Kasturba Katha with her blessings to realize our truest potential and to bring about change, serving selflessly with total devotion and dedication. The Gandhi Katha Dhun that we'll end with is Shubha Mangal Ho. Shubhamangal ho, Shubhamangal, Mangal, Mangal ho.
मंगल हो शुभ मंगल हो शुभ मंगल मंगल शुभ मंगल हो शुभ मंगल हो शुभ